just start in 3 to 4 minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Devesh Lathi from the Next Genius Foundation, and I welcome all of you to this another week of SAT prep. Good afternoon, Meghna ma'am.
Good afternoon.
So we have English rhetoric session right now, SAT writing rhetoric, and over to you, ma'am. Passing on the stage to you.
Okay. Thank you, Devesh. Good afternoon, everyone. And as we all know that we are here to discuss the rhetoric uh, style of questions on the essay writing section, let me first introduce you to the types of questions that we see on the writing section. Let me note them down for you here so that we can discuss them one by one. Uh, the most frequently and many questions given are addition and deletion questions. Then we have replacement questions, replacement of information. So here basically we have categories. We have introduction questions, we have conclusion questions, we have effective combination of the two sentences question, and then we have specific instruction questions. Okay, then we have sentence order questions. We have data interpretation. We have diction idioms and style. we have concision and redundancy, and there are some miscellaneous questions that do not fall into any of these categories. But yeah, they sometimes check you for the sentence structure, whether it is a question or a simple sentence and so on. Okay. All right. Let's discuss these questions one by one. So let's talk about addition and deletion questions. You will see plenty of these questions on the SAT paper writing section. And overall, we get 15 to 20 rhetoric questions. So they hold a good number of questions on the paper. Now, these are very standard types of questions. SAT being a very standardized test, I mean, you can expect the framework of the questions, the types of options they give you. The sentence would say that the author or the writer wants to add this sentence here at this point in the paragraph. Should it be added or not? Same goes for deletion. The author wants to delete the underlined sentence. Should it be deleted or not? These questions come with four very standard options, two yes options, two no options, and these options have their own reasons to follow. Yes, because of this, no, because of this. Okay. Now, these questions are, sometimes very confusing for some students. The reason being, we just read to read, whereas we must read to analyze the information. Analytical reading comes into picture here. When I say analytical reading, I mean that you just don't read the context, but you observe, analyze the logical flow of the information there. So if we read carefully, we can actually eliminate the options, because sometimes you will see that the reasons do not go well with the sentence to be added or deleted. Sometimes reading the sentence before and after the point where you have to add the sentence will tell you whether you need some information here, is there a gap here, or you can simply avoid it and these two sentences are in good connection to each other. Okay, so there are many things that may work here. They are very, very subjective questions, but I can tell you two, three things that can always help you. So, title of the passage, always. Main idea of the paragraph. Where you have to add or delete the information. Okay. Now, one of the options may look correct according to the passage, but here you are, the question is asking you to introduce the idea in the paragraph, whether it suits at that particular point in the paragraph or not. So we'll not actually look at the bigger picture here. We have to narrow down our approach and we have to become very specific to the paragraph and see whether this information is actually required in the paragraph at this point or not. It might be true according to the passage, but might not be suitable at that point in the paragraph. So, this kind of analysis will always help you with addition and deletion questions. Addition questions are of two types. One, where they simply tell you that the author wants to add this information here, should it be added or not. Another one, which actually is combined with sentence order, which says that the author wants to add this sentence to the paragraph where it should be added. Okay, so I'll talk about it once we talk about sentence order. Let's go to the second category of questions, replacement of information. Now, it includes a variety of questions. As you can see here, I've mentioned four types of questions here broadly. First one is introduction. Now, these are two types of questions. One, intro to the passage. Two, intro to the paragraph. Now, intro to the passage question, like 99% of the times, it will be somewhere between first to fifth question of the first paragraph, first passage. Okay, and it will ask you to introduce the whole passage. It may be at number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, anywhere. Now, by the time you reach this question, you have obviously not read the complete passage, right? And it's always a good idea to skip this question, complete the passage, and then come back to it. Okay? Why? Because until I read the whole passage, I cannot decide about the main idea of the passage. Though sometimes you can actually, depending on the first paragraph, if you read the first paragraph carefully, you sometimes get the main idea very, very accurately. But sometimes it doesn't happen. So it's always a good idea to skip this question and come back to it. When it comes to the introduction of a paragraph question, this question may be framed in two, three ways, like which choice most effectively introduces the paragraph that follows, which choice introduces the main idea of the paragraph that follows, which choice supports the main claim of the paragraph. So they all are the same thing, introduction questions. This question will be the first question of that paragraph, that particular paragraph. And again, you will be skipping this question. Okay. Why do we skip this question? Because, see, for the same reason, I have not yet read the paragraph and I cannot decide the best introduction for this paragraph until I read it. Okay. So we skip this question and you should do the other questions in the paragraph while reading the paragraph. Like, let's say this is question 4 and you have 5, 6, 7 also in that paragraph. So do question 5, 6, 7 and then you come back to question 4. This will ensure better comprehension in less time. Otherwise, you will be doing the repetitive work. You'll be reading the same paragraph twice for two purposes. That's not advisable. Skip the introduction questions always, whether it is passage or paragraph. Let's talk about conclusion questions. So mostly they ask you to conclude the passage. Rarely they ask you to conclude the paragraph, but you may see both the types of questions on the paper. So when you see a conclusion question, you will observe, I mean, if you're solving tests, multiple tests, you will observe that these questions come with specific instructions. If the author wanted to conclude the paragraph by uh, emphasizing on this, or if the author wanted to conclude the passage by reinforcing this idea or by reinforcing the point made in para 1 and so on. So you will always have one very clear cut instruction in the question. And if you follow that instruction carefully, you don't go wrong with conclusion questions, which mostly students actually see that their questions are getting incorrect, their answers are getting incorrect. Why? Because they are not focusing on that particular instruction that is given to them, but they are looking at the overall picture of the passage. There you will get confused because you will see that all four options are absolutely correct, seem absolutely correct according to the passage, and that's where the confusion arrives, right? So we should pay attention on that particular instruction that is given to us. Following that, we should eliminate the options and then we should get to the right answer there. Okay, so as I said, following the instruction in these questions will do the trick. Nothing else works here. Follow the instructions, eliminate the options. That's it. Let's talk about the third category, effective combination. Now you will see 3 questions approximately on the paper on effective combination. It can be more than 3, like 4 also or 2 also. Again, this is a very, very, very standard question. Which choice most effectively introduces the 2 sentences, the underlying sentences? So you will always have 2 complete sentences with a full stop underlined in the paragraph. And you have to combine them in the most effective manner. Now, when I say most effective manner, what do I mean here? This sounds a little vague. So, trust me, they are actually checking you for concision here. Shortest and crispiest answer, the most precise combination. But there are many things that actually influence our decision or our selection of the option. So, though they check you for the shortest possible combination of the 2 sentences, you will be able to make selection depending on many variables. Like transitions may help you. Okay, so if the 2 sentences have a continuation of information, and an option gives you a contradictory transition word like but or however, that definitely cannot be your answer. So one point of elimination is transitions. Second point of elimination is punctuations. If the options are not correctly punctuated, or say semicolons and comma fanboys options, we don't generally choose them, right? Reason being, they are usually not your answers. Uh, so as I said, there are variables depending on which you will make selection in these types of questions. But yeah, the the gist remains in this only, that these are the shortest possible combinations of the two sentences. The most crisp and precise combination will be your answer. Let's talk about specific instruction questions. Specific instruction questions actually come with some specific instructions, like code questions. They say that which code from this person supports the information given in the previous sentence. Second type of question is where they ask you to provide a second supporting example. Okay. Third type of question is where they ask you to set up the information that follows or that is given in the previous sentence. So all these questions have specific instructions here, and you have to follow these instructions. So if the question is asking you to give a second supporting example, search for the first example in the paragraph before you go to the options. Okay, that first example will give you an idea of what you're supposed to look for in the options. When the question asks you to set up the information that follows or that is there in the previous sentence, don't go to the question. First, you read the information that follows or which is there in the previous sentence or previous part of the sentence. Try to understand what is the main idea of that particular sentence that follows or that is there uh, before this sentence. Once you get the main idea of that sentence, you will be in a better position to decide on your options. Never forget that each passage has its own main idea. In that passage, each paragraph has its main idea. And in that paragraph, also, sentences have their own main ideas. And when they ask you to set up the information which is already given in the paragraph, it becomes very, very important for us to reread. If you don't get it in one go, read it twice, thrice, but do make sure that you're reading it properly and you're getting to the main idea of the sentence, and then only you are making your choice of option. So specific instruction questions do not have any specific strategy to go for. It's just that you have to follow that instruction to the T. If you do that, you will not go wrong with these options. But again, analytical reading is the key here, for all these types of questions. Let's talk about sentence order questions. Now, sentence order question is the question that appears at the last of the paragraph, in the last. So this will be the last question of the paragraph. And this question will ask you that for the logic and cohesion of the paragraph, this particular sentence should be placed. And then you get 4 options: after this sentence, before that sentence, after this sentence, and so on. In the same fashion, they ask you this addition question also. As I told you earlier, that the author wants to add this sentence to this paragraph, where it should be added. Now, whenever students see this question, the first reaction to this question is they go to the paragraph and reread it to understand the logic and the flow of the information in the paragraph. And the chances are that you will end up in a more confusing state of mind if you read the whole paragraph. So it's better we pay attention on the sentence that has to be replaced. Say it is sentence 4 that you have to replace. So focus on that sentence and try to find the connection of that sentence with the options given to you. No need to go through the whole paragraph again. You have already read it. Don't do repetitive work. You will do it only when it is actually required and you can't answer the question without rereading the information. Here, no need to read the paragraph. Focus on the sentence that you have to replace. Also, check its connection with the options given to you. If the paragraph has 7 sentences, but you have only 4 options after sentence 1, 2, 3, and 4, you don't need to write 5, 6, you don't need to read 5, 6, and 7. Read 1, 2, 3, 4 and see where there is a good connection of the sentence, and then that's your answer. So do some smart work, save your time, because this time is required for some more complicated questions. Okay, let's come to the next category, data interpretation. Data interpretation questions sometimes can be very, very challenging, and sometimes they are cakewalk. I mean, you don't even have to spend a lot of time there or think about it. It's a straight question from, you have to just justify the information from the graph, and it is very clearly given to you in the graph or the table, and you can pick up that option. But when are these questions challenging? When the pattern of the graph is little different. Instead of giving it to you vertically, they give it to you horizontal, graphs, or they use they use the para also along with the graph or the table. Uh, the question says that which of the following introduces relevant information from the graph. Now, relevant information means you have to take the paragraph also in consideration. Relevant means relevant to that sentence where you are adding this information from the graph. So in these questions, you will see that all 4 options are true according to the graph. But all 4 cannot be your answers. There is only one answer. That answer, that option which is relevant to the sentence where you have to fill in is your answer. So always be careful with these options that say which choice provides relevant information from the graph. This question is actually asking you to take the paragraph also in consideration. Okay? All right. Let's come to the next category of questions, that is diction, style, and idioms. Basically, these are 3 types of questions, but why am I talking about all of them in one go? Because they give you mixed kind of questions. So it can be a diction plus style question, it can be a diction plus idiom question, style and idiom question, and so on. So diction means vocabulary. Here comes in picture your command on vocabulary. So you are not supposed to, learn the words, because you get only 2 to 3 questions. And gone are the days when you actually had to learn 5,000 words if you were, aspiring for SAT, at least a 5,000 words. So here it's only 2, 3 questions. And the good news is that these questions are contextual. So if you understand the context well, if you understand what are you conveying here, this becomes easy for you. So rather than focusing on the options that you have got, you should focus on where you have to place this word. Try to understand what you're trying to convey and then make your choice. Style is the style of writing, and SAT talks about 3 styles of writings: uh, too informal, too formal, and then semi formal. Let me give you an example here. If I say, my friend has some pretty cool stuff to do, this is little informal, right? Not little, it is too informal. Then I say, my friend has a plethora of intriguing objects. This is way too formal. And then I say, my friend has some interesting things to do. This is the option that is your answer. The options in the semi formal tone. We are not supposed to go for too formal an option or too casual an option. Why? Because these passages that you get on the writing section of the SAT are always in semi formal kind of language. They are never in too formal language or old English, nor they are in too formal a language. So we should also choose an option that is uh, suitable to the tone or the style of the passage, that is semi formal. Idioms. Idioms are actually preposition errors on the SAT. So, how do they check you on idioms? They check you for the pairs of these prepositions with certain verbs or certain nouns. And sometimes these prepositions come to us very, very naturally because we have been using these, combinations since starting, or we know what is the right combination, but some of them might look very, very awkward to us because either we did not know them or we have been using them incorrectly. For example, if I say, people very commonly make a mistake while speaking or writing. That is, they say, I am aware about something, something, whatever. So if I say, I am aware about the current happenings in my country, what's wrong here? The word about. Okay? Because the word aware always takes of. I am aware of the current happenings in my country. But that's a very commonly made mistake. And when you hear it, you actually don't uh, find it wrong, also, because our ears have become so comfortable hearing this. But this is actually wrong. And if it appears on the paper, we have to choose of, not about. Similarly, we say similar to, not similar with, accustomed to, not accustomed with. We always abide by the rules, we don't abide to the rules. Succeed always takes in, so we always succeed in doing something, and this combination of succeed in always is followed by a gerund. Like I was he succeeded in convincing his father to go to the party. So convincing is the ing form, the gerund form that I'm talking about. So this combination will always be followed by the ing form. And similarly, we have on, in, from, for, with, by that have certain combinations. Let me tell you one more very tricky and interesting prepositional combination here. If it is in contrast, it will always take to. So something is in contrast to whatever. But if it is only contrast, there is no in there, then it will use with. Okay, so these are some tricky cases also, which you might find baffling when you come to know about them. But then gradually, eventually, you become comfortable with them because they are the correct ones and we have to choose them only. Okay, so these are idioms. And when they give you combination of the two, what kind of questions you will see? Like effect in, effect of. So that's a idiom plus diction question. Affect and effect are very confusing words for some, and they ask you these commonly confused words in the category of diction questions, like affect, effect, advise, advise, practice, practice, disinterested, uninterested, elicit, illicit, and so on. All right, let's move on, and we go to the sixth type of question, that is concision and redundancy. So let's talk about concision. Concision comes from conciseness, that is, keeping it short. So that's the theme of the whole writing section on the SAT, that we have to go for the shortest possible version of the given sentence or underlined sentence. Okay. To achieve this objective, we usually avoid options in passive voice. Let me give you an example. If I say, I have done my work, and the passive voice is, my work has been done by me. Now, you will observe that passive voice sentences are inherently longer than the active voice sentences. And that's the reason we don't go for passive voice. Okay. Uh, to give you one more example on conciseness, I can say that um looking at the weather today, I strongly feel that it will rain heavily. Or I can simply say, a heavy rain is imminent today. Okay. So avoid the use of too many words. When we go for the most concise option, we also don't compromise on grammar and punctuation, obviously. So we have to take those two aspects also in consideration. Let's talk about redundancy. Redundancy is unnecessary repetition of the information which you have already provided in the sentence. So, a very common redundancy error among the students of your age, not only your age, I mean, many people make this mistake. They say repeat again. Now, repeat itself means that say it again. So, we don't need to say again there. That's redundancy. Uh, how many times you would have asked your friend, when are you returning my book back? So returning itself means give it back. You don't need a back there. Okay. Similarly, reply back, revert back. These are all redundant options. What kind of questions you may see on the SAT on this topic? A combination of annual and per year. So you will avoid per year because annual already does the work. A combination of prominent and well known. So prominent itself means somebody who is famous, somebody who is known to everyone. So well known is extra. If I say she has decided to write an autobiography of her life, here our life is extra because autobiography itself means uh, that she wants to write about her own life. Okay, so avoid the repetition, and when you avoid the repetition, you actually are going concise there. You're using few words. So, as I said, I mean, you will never see any instruction given in these questions. They will not say that find the redundant option or non-redundant option or find the shortest possible answer. You will never see these instructions. You will see the question, you will see the options, and based on those options, reading them, you will have to understand what is this question checking me on. So it can be conciseness, it can be redundancy, and it can be a mix of style and conciseness. It can be a mix of um, diction and concision, wherein they give you three phrases and one word that actually does the work of those phrases, so you go for the fourth one. This is how they check you on the rhetoric questions. And there are some specific tips and tricks to do these questions correctly, and there are some questions which are very very subjective, and you will have to be spontaneous there. You will have to read carefully and decide what can be your answer. So this is it from my side on rhetoric questions on the SAT writing section. Over to you, Devesh.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Superb session. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I think this is something we all can learn from. We also write a lot of emails every day, and we read a lot of emails. We read a lot of text every day. So very useful session, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the students enjoyed and learned a lot. And of course, they have a lot to think about now when they start working on their SAT questions.
Yes, yes.
So thank you so much, ma'am. And now moving on to the next part of the session, we have a very special guest joining us here today. We have the emerging counselor of the year from Manthan School in Hyderabad. We have Ms. Ramya Modukuri, who is going to share with us about the importance of reading and how you can build your reading skills while you are preparing for SAT early on. A very warm welcome to you, Ramya. It's a pleasure to have you here on the session today.
Thank you, Devesh. And hello, students. Ms. Meghna, I really enjoyed the last 15 minutes of your session as well. And actually, one of the things is, I was smiling to myself as you were talking about idioms. And what I have also, in addition to being a counselor, I have taught English as spoken language for 2 years to disadvantaged youth. But what I've always found is so much of English, because it defies logic, is down to really, we're more familiar with the things that we've kept on using or reading. So this brings me nicely to, the importance of reading. And so very quickly, because I know I have a limited amount of time, but one thing I want to tell, because I believe today we have students here of grades 10 and 11, right? And, especially I would say for 10th graders, I think really make it a habit of reading, right? And it'll help you in so many ways, not just, for your SAT practice. But I think the couple of things I wanted to talk about was, this is from my own experience as a counselor. What I see is, students, even good ones, even the well-read ones, Ms. Meghna would have probably more, insight into this, but many of them have told me, ma'am, we just get exhausted by the end of the verbal section, the English section, because it's just so many dense passages. And I myself have looked at the papers, and I am the SAT coordinator for my school. So I do see that, I read the passages when the kids are taking the test, I'll glance at it, and it is so dense. And so what's really important is reading, but not just reading for the sake of it, but reading variety, right? So read both fiction and nonfiction. within fiction, which is obviously easier for you, don't just stick to your young adult novels, which are, I know, very tempting, but, read variety, right? And look for the really quality reading books, like, look for the Man Booker Prize winning books. Those have fantastic vocabulary and language. Look for the Pulitzer Prize winners. Look for different types of fiction too, right? So look for historic fiction, read classics, science fiction, and also, try to get authors across, not just regions, but writing styles too, right? So American authors, South American authors, Asian authors, African authors. And from each of those, you will find a different style, because obviously, when you read a classic, Jane Austen will have obviously a very different style from, Haruki Murakami, who'd have a very different style from William Faulkner, and so it's very important to get variety. And in nonfiction also, nonfiction is trickier for many of us. I think Devesh and I were talking about this. I love reading. All my life, I have loved reading, but I always veer towards fiction. For me, like, I have to force myself to read nonfiction. And, but I have been good about forcing myself. But sometimes in my life, I'm like, I just want that guilty pleasure of reading some really good fiction. And sometimes not even really good fiction. It's just like bad fiction. But it's important that, you do that. And again, variety is the key, right? So read biographies, history, science related, books, math related books, business economics, which are always in the popular press in some form or the other. And then magazines too, right? And some quality magazines that I would recommend are obviously, National Geographic, I think, which we in India are a lot more familiar with. But also, the New Yorker is fantastic because they have these really analytical essays on a huge variety of like political, scientific, and different topics. And The Economist is excellent, for political science. Their articles aren't as long, but they're still very, very well written, and it's very, very high quality language, right? Compared to, like, let's say Time Magazine, Newsweek, or India Today, which are meant a little bit more for the common man to digest a little more easily, right? Not to say that they're bad, but it's just, if you're looking for quality of the written word, you'll definitely find it more in these. And then newspapers, yes, I do feel the Indian newspapers most of them, unfortunately, are going the wrong way in terms of, it's just too dumbed down in many ways. And of course, the Western papers have their own issues because they're becoming very politically biased. But still, in terms of language, I'd say New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, these are all very good. Some of them obviously have limited access, but even that, sign up for it. You don't have to pay for it. New York Times gives you 10 articles a month, I think, free. New Yorker gives you some 4 articles a month free. Sign up for it. At the very least, you can read those 4 articles or 10 articles. And what all this does is, it's not just your SAT, but, when you read especially nonfiction that is related to the subject that you like or the subject that you want to pursue in undergrad, then it also helps, when you have to write those supplemental essays for the US about why did you pick this subject, right? Beyond just saying, okay, I did this in the classroom, and, for my internship, I did this or project, you can also write a little bit about how this has influenced your thinking, right? When you read different economists, right? Each one there are ones that focus more on the supply side. There are more, ones that are more traditional. And so there's a lot of, different viewpoints that you get that will really help you, right? So it is important for that as well. And for you, if any of you are looking at applying to the both US and UK, you know that for UK, you have to write the personal statement. And one of the very popular ways of showing your interest in a subject in the personal statement is through the kind of books you've read on that subject, right? You talk about how this has influenced your thinking and, so on and so forth. And lastly, I know, I do have quite a few students who come and say, but ma'am, what if I really don't like reading? And I empathize, my own brother in my own household, my parents used to buy us so many books, and I always loved reading, and my brother always disliked it. So everybody is different, and it's not to say there's a right or wrong, but in general, it would behoove you to at least try and make a little bit of a habit of it, right? It doesn't mean it has to always, you have to force yourself to become really like a bibliophile or someone who's always curled up with a book, but at least make it a habit to read the papers every day. Make it a habit to spend at least 20-30 minutes of your weekend reading any of these things that we described, right? And I think that will really help you. And you guys probably have heard this, that it takes somewhere between 21 and on an average like 66 days or 2 months to create a habit, right? So start today. Even if you don't like reading, force yourself to read something for 15 minutes and start with something you genuinely love, right? Even if it's only watching movies, pick up some nonfiction book that's about the Indian cinema if you really love movies, or if you really love these stories of business and finance, pick up an easy to read book. And two things are, Goodreads is a great resource on finding good books, and Amazon actually. And don't go to amazon.in, go to amazon.com to look for the reviews, because I mean, I don't mean anything against but what I find in my own Amazon in history is I just feel like it always shows me these like no offense to Chetan Bhagat, I actually have read all his books and I like them, and he happens to be someone I know actually, but it's just too many of these kind of books. And I think if you go to amazon.com, they also have like better categories, in terms of Pulitzer Prize winners and, Booker Prize winners and stuff. And I would look at those and see, if you can look for things that are of common, interest. But start small and, build it up from there. But please, do try to make it a habit. So I'm at 8 minutes. I'm pretty happy.
Superb, Ramya. I think that's an amazing advice. And of course, I think a lot of students, they always struggle with reading, and they can't, they don't know where exactly to start from. So I think you really gave them some practical advice, that go to Amazon, go to Goodread, and that's where you can start building your reading habits. And of course, a lot of other newspaper online websites like New York Times and Washington Post, websites like that. I think that's really great, very helpful for the students. Do you have a couple of books that you would like to recommend to the early readers?
I'm actually going to share a list with you. So I dug it out. It's by subject, by grade and by subject. So,
Perfect.
I will share it with you, you can share it. It does tend to be a bit more, heavy, because in 9th grade itself, it has like some really serious work. So use that. But like I said, ultimately, I mean, that one is for students who probably already like reading to some extent and then can build upon it. But if you really don't like it, like I said, look for reviews online of, things that are in, like if it's popular, that obviously means that, many people are able to enjoy it, which means it's more likely that you'll enjoy it. So start with those kind of things, right? And sometimes Amazon gives you a little, sample, so you can read through, like, especially if you have the Kindle, I often download the sample and I read it to see whether that may be something I like or not. But I'm a big fan of going through reviews as well, just a few of them, to see, what's the story about and would I like it or not. So yeah, I think.
Absolutely. I think that's a great advice. Ramya, is Manthan also a SAT center?
We are, but this year we haven't really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. We've only done the PSAT this year, and that too only the NMSQT. We'll do the PSAT 10, but I think next year we'll be doing the SAT. Yeah.
Great. So any advice on that end to the students on what to be careful about when they're really coming for the test?
So I think, like you mean to the center? Like
the test day advice.
I don't know, just be relaxed, and I've heard so many strategies from so many kids. I don't know, like it's really, I'm sure the trainers would be better positioned to say, but most of the times kids are pretty relaxed. I think that's the key, right? If you've done your prep work, there is no reason to be stressed. So just and get a good night's sleep. Obviously, this is not one of those cramming exams. There's nothing you can do in the last day or the last, sitting up and doing. And one thing I just want to say, my kids, at least, they always tell me that the more full-length practice tests they do, they find it's easier because it builds your mental stamina too, right? It's one thing doing a section, just doing that, but it is a long test. I mean, I appreciate it, you have to build that mental stamina, and so doing full length tests, the more you do, the better placed you will be. And that's also why I think reading is important, right? And especially some of these like historic US history. I'm sorry, I hate history in general. So I sympathize with the students who have to read those passages. And then there are so many, like you said, Meghna, like all the types of questions that come up. You're like, you have to go through the question, then you go back to that passage, find that like where it's marked 46 or 47, and then try to understand the question, try to understand the answer. And then you're always left with those two choices at the end. You're like, I don't know which, it could be either one. So just relax, do your best, and the good news is that anyway, most universities, I think in the long run will become test optional. Many are already staying test optional for the next year as well. So, those of you who are in 11th, just take it in that spirit, right? Do the best you can. If you get a good, if you're above the university's mid 50% profile, then submit your SAT scores. Otherwise, you don't have to. So, that should take a lot of stress off, really, right? So good luck. And, I'm sure you'll all be acing it with all the support you're getting. And great job, to the Next Genius guys for doing this. I think it's what you've done this whole summer, since the summer, has been fantastic in terms of helping the students, both from figuring out profile building opportunities and now the test prep. So it's really wonderful work.
Thank you so much, Ramya. Thank you so much. For the test prep scholarships, we have partnered with SAT and Paper. They have very generously helped and decided to offer lots of scholarships for students to prepare for their SATs and ACCs. So Meghna ma'am is the representative from SAT and Paper in this session. So I think thank you, Meghna ma'am, as well. And thank you, Ramya. It was really great advice. Superb. Really enjoyed listening to your thoughts on how to build a reading habit in the students. And of course, I think some of us elders as well can learn and start reading a little more. So great. Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good day. Bye. Bye.